In the late 1960s, the East-West tensions reached the peak, and the Soviet Union set up a project of the new generation of fighter jet, one that could possibly threaten the latest American warplanes like the F-14 Tomcat and the F-15 Eagle. The future MiG-29, known by NATO as Fulcrum, was created to satisfy this urgent requirement. The engineers of the Mikoyan Design Bureau started to work on a nimble and lightweight plane for dogfighting. Its engine was required to be powerful, and its avionics system was expected to be highly advanced. The prime requirement was that the jet must be superior to an enemy aircraft. In 1977, the first prototype completed and flight tested successfully that demonstrated great potential. The MiG-29 had a characteristic twin vertical stabilizer and cropped wings that made it look fast and dangerous. In the engine compartment, 2 Klimov turbofans were enough to give the aircraft a top speed of more than 1,500 miles per hour. To put Soviet pilots in the lead, the Fulcrum was equipped with a swept wing and one of the first ever fly-by-wire flight control systems. This computer-aided design improved the agility and handling at any speed. The MiG-29 was carrying a great deal of air-to-air missiles and a 30mm cannon, so it was becoming an extremely deadly enemy. In 1983, the MiG-29 Fulcrum fighters began service with the Soviet Air Force. During the following 10 years, these rockets were manufactured in large quantities to provide air defense for the member states of the Eastern Bloc. The pilots of their aircraft became very skillful in the art of dogfighting and could engage the F-16 NATO aircraft. However, the powerful little MiG was often used in combat abroad, performing many homeland defense missions. Fulcrum fighters were deployed in many combat roles over Lebanon, Afghanistan, and the Persian Gulf region in the 80s. They engaged the F-14 Tomcat and F-A-18 Hornet aircrafts of the American side to a stalemate on many occasions. The MiG-29's combative qualities, including its toughness, agility, and firepower, gained it a grudging respect from Western pilots and commanders. Even though Soviet fighters were deficient in avionics and range, they were capable of outrunning American fighters in close-quarter dogfights. This was a major reason why the Fulcrum was a tenacious opponent to fight. The MiG-29 disintegrated in the aftermath of the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, and the fighter jets were dispersed to newly independent nations and areas of conflict. A number of air forces in the Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa have bought the jet for the sake of their air power on a budget. Fulcrum became a treasured export item, finding a new market in the Middle East. In the period after the Cold War, Russia was actively upgrading, exporting, and supplying the MiG-29 to the countries all over the world. The multi-purpose Fulcrum received enhanced attack capabilities and precision-guided munition for ground strikes. It was due to this reason that it became very effective in security operations over Chechnya and other hotspots. The MiG-29, which has proven itself to be an indomitable fighter, remains the mainstay of the Russian Air Force's fighter fleet to this day. While the mighty little jet has also been active in many other conflicts in recent decades, it has also seen a lot of action. Syrian Fulcrums encountered Israeli F-15s and F-16s in the air when they were battling in Lebanon. The MiG-29s from Africa and the Middle East have been used in counterinsurgency operations by the nations. The first MiG-29 Fulcrum fighters were introduced into service with the Soviet Air Force in 1983. Over the course of the next decade, they were manufactured in large numbers to reinforce the air defense across the Eastern Bloc countries. Their pilots earned the reputation of being real dogfighters against NATO's F-16s. Besides the homeland defense missions, the MiG-15 was also widely used in the combat operations far away from the Soviet borders. Fulcrum fighters were employed widely during the Lebanese, Afghan, and Gulf Wars of the 80s. They were able to stand up to American fighter jets, including the F-14 Tomcat, F-A-18 Hornet, and many occasions. The toughness, nimbleness, and firepower of the MiG-29 made it the envy of the Western pilots and commanders, although grudgingly. Despite the fact that they had not been equipped with avionics and long-range capabilities, they could outmaneuver the American fighters in close quarters. This was the reason why the Fulcrum was a terrible enemy to be reckoned with. India probably holds the title of the largest of the Fulcrum operators overseas. The Indian Air Force has been operating its large MiG-29 fleet since the 1980s. They've taken on Pakistani fighters in mock dogfights and have given rise to air superiority during the Kargil War. The Indian Fulcrums may be able to be in service for a prolonged period until the mid-2030s after their life extension. The MiG-29 Fulcrum, with more than 1,600 units manufactured in many versions and still counting, is a living testament to the greatness of the Soviet aviation industry. It was designed as a fast, easy-to-operate fighter plane to counter the dominance of Western air forces. Finally, the Fulcrum, which was originally designed to achieve this goal and has been widely adopted and proven in the battlefield, was more than what was expected. The period after the Cold War was not an exception either, as Russia went on to modernize and export the MiG-29 to different countries. The Fulcrum was transformed into a multi-role fighter, with improved attack capabilities and precision-guided munition for ground strikes. It could be superior in such operations as Chechnya and other hotspots thanks to this. The MiG-29 is still in service with the Russian Air Force's fighter jets and is still a very capable aircraft. However, the small but sturdy aircraft has also made a name for itself by taking part in numerous other conflicts in the last couple of decades. Syrian Fulcrums were thrown against the Israeli F-15s and F-16s when they confronted each other in Lebanon. Some of the African and Middle Eastern nations have used their MiG-29s for counterinsurgency operations. India is the biggest user of Fulcrum outside the border. The Indian Air Force has been operating its huge fleet of 60-plus MiG-29 since the 80s. The Pakistanis have been involved in simulated dogfights with Indian fighters, and in the Kargil conflict they have provided their air superiority. The Indian Fulcrums might be kept in action till the 2030s after the service life extension. The MiG-29 Fulcrum is a Soviet-era aircraft produced over 1,600 units, its numerous variants, and still counting, which is an evidence of the lasting legacy of the Soviet aviation. It was designed as a lightweight multi-purpose fighter to overthrow the superiority of the Western Air Force. The Fulcrum not only fulfilled its purpose but also succeeded beyond expectations, being a battle-tested product and gaining wide acceptance. While an impressive feat of Soviet aviation, the MiG-29 still owes much of its legacy to the skilled pilots who have flown it. In the hands of these well-trained aces, the highly responsive Fulcrum became a fearsome dogfighting platform. From the onset, Soviet aviators put the new MiG through the paces against Western fighters. Pragmatic tactics taught by flight instructors allowed their cadets to exploit the jet's strengths during simulated clashes. Mastering unconventional moves like the famous Cobra gave pilots the psychological edge in aerial combat. The MiG-29 Fulcrum is a modern jet fighter which is widely used in the world today. The aircraft is in service at different continents, and it does not only shoulder the burden of homeland air defense but also security operations. Despite the fact that Russia and its allies in particular, the Su-35, are brought into the service, the Fulcrum is far from being obsolete. The multi-role airframe versatility and effectiveness and cost have been great factors for its long survival. Originally designed as a high-class air superiority fighter, the MiG-29 was later modified to successfully attack ground targets. This adaptability led to persistent exports and modifications to remain a jet that is relevant against the latest aerial threats. However, the Fulcrum ended up being a real landmark in the Soviet engineering and aviation history. Its double-tailed shape was distinct, and it was easy to recognize. It became the nightmares of Cold War strategists. In the course of time, many memorials, tributes, and MiG-29s restored in the military museums of the former USSR can be seen.